The second test was different. Natalie, 22 years old, college graduate, the little girl I'd walked to kindergarten, taught to ride a bike, scared bad boyfriends away from with the kind of quiet menace only a father can pull off. 0% probability of paternity, excluded as biological father. I sat in that car for 10 minutes just staring at those words. And here's what I need you to understand. That number didn't erase a single memory. It didn't undo the first day of school or the father-daughter dances or the way she used to fall asleep on the couch watching movies and pretend she hadn't. 0% doesn't delete 22 years. But it does rewrite every single day of your marriage in one cold, clinical paragraph. And the worst part? The timeline had always bothered me. I just loved her mother enough to stop asking questions. Turns out that's the most expensive thing I ever did.
My name is Marcus Webb. I'm 54 years old. Corporate controller, suburban house paid off early, 2 grown kids who turned out decent despite everything. By most people's scorecards, I'd nailed it. But here's what nobody tells you about nailing it. Sometimes you're so busy keeping everything together that you don't notice the whole thing's been rigged against you from the start. 26 years. That's how long I've been married to Diana. College sweethearts, the whole rom-com origin story. We met at a house party junior year, bonded over bad pizza and worse beer, and somehow decided that meant we should share a mortgage, a last name, and a bathroom vanity for the rest of our lives. Romantic, right? Sure. Sure it was. So there I am, a regular Saturday. I'm running errands, dry cleaning, hardware store, the kind of midlife tasks that make you feel like a supporting character in someone else's movie, when I come home to find Diana in the kitchen, in a dress I'd never seen before, actually cooking. This alone should have set off alarm bells because Diana hadn't cooked regularly since our youngest hit middle school. She'd retired from domestic duties like a veteran athlete hanging up their jersey. "You're cooking?" I said, like a complete idiot, as if I'd walked on a unicorn making pasta. She didn't turn around, just said she thought we could have a nice dinner, just the 2 of us. Now look, I'm a numbers guy. I've spent my career reading spreadsheets, spotting anomalies, catching the data that doesn't fit the pattern, and every single data point in that kitchen was screaming that something was off. The black dress, the good china, candles lit at 6 p.m. on a random Saturday, red wine in crystal glasses that only came out on Christmas and when someone had news they were terrified to deliver. My appetite evaporated somewhere between the entryway and the dining table. But I sat down anyway because that's what you do when you're a calm, collected, stupidly patient person who has been trained by 26 years of marriage to absorb weirdness without flinching. We ate mostly in silence. She refilled her wine glass twice before I'd even touched mine. And then, right on cue, like a villain in a soap opera who's finally tired of waiting for the dramatic moment, she set down her fork, leaned back in her chair, and smiled. Not a warm smile. Not an "I love you and I'm glad we're doing this" smile. It was the kind of smile that belongs in a psychology textbook under the chapter titled "Red Flags You Ignored." "I need to tell you something," she said, and I looked up from my chicken. "I had a one-night thing." She paused, watching my face like she was about to collect on a bet. "And honestly, I'd do it again." The words just hung there in the air between us like cigarette smoke in a non-smoking room. And I want you to picture this clearly, because what happened next is the part where this story stops being a tragedy and starts being something else entirely. I picked up my fork, took a bite, chewed, swallowed, set the fork down with the kind of deliberate care that communicated exactly one thing. I already knew you were capable of this. "Okay," I said. Her smile cracked, just for a second, just a flicker. And honestly, that was the beginning of the end. Her end. Because that folder on my laptop, the one I'd been quietly building for 8 months, was already full. Here's the thing about being a calm, controlled person that people fundamentally misunderstand. They think it means you don't feel things, that you're some kind of emotionally lobotomized robot in khakis who processes betrayal the same way a printer processes a job, mechanically, without reaction, moving straight to the next task. Wrong. Dangerously wrong. What it actually means is that you've learned to separate the feeling from the response. You feel everything. You just don't hand the keys over to your emotions and let them drive. I went upstairs that night, sat on the edge of the bed, and let myself feel it. The quiet confirmation of something I'd been suspecting for the better part of a year. Because that's what Diana's little dinner theater confession was. Confirmation. Not a surprise, not a gut punch, a receipt. 8 months earlier, I'd noticed the first anomaly, a hotel charge on the credit card statement that didn't match any trip I could remember. Small enough to be explained away, big enough to bother someone whose entire job is to make sure numbers make sense. I'd flagged it mentally and kept watching. Then there were the texts she'd angle her phone away from, the late work events. The subtle shift in her energy, the way she'd started looking through me instead of at me, and the name that kept appearing in her calendar, Travis Keller, consultant, marketing sector, apparently very consultative. I didn't confront her. I know, most people's instinct is to blow up immediately, to demand answers, to turn the whole house into a courtroom. But here's what blowing up gets you. It gets you a defensive partner, a deleted trail of evidence, and a lawyer who's going to have a much harder time making your case. What I did instead was open a folder on my laptop and label it, with maximum corporate banality, contingency plan. Bank statements, credit card records, email archives, security camera footage from our home system, the one I'd upgraded 8 months ago without mentioning that the new version backed up automatically to cloud storage. Hotel receipts between Travis and Diana. 17 of them, as it turned out, because apparently one-night thing is a very flexible definition in some people's personal dictionaries.
Sunday mornings in our house had a rhythm. I'd wake at 6:30, grind the overpriced coffee beans Diana preferred from that bougie little downtown shop, brew a full pot, fix her cup exactly the way she liked it, and carry it upstairs on that wooden tray like a well-trained household appliance. For 26 years, I performed this ritual without fail. Rain, snow, post-argument tension thick enough to slice with a bread knife. Didn't matter. Coffee appeared. Because that's what I did. That's what I was, apparently, in this marriage. The dependable infrastructure that kept everything running while Diana focused on the more interesting parts of her life. Not Sunday. Sunday, I woke at 6:30, got dressed in my board meeting outfit, grabbed my leather briefcase, and walked downstairs to the sound of her groggily calling from the bedroom. "Paul, are you making coffee?" Reader, I was not making coffee. I drank a glass of water in the kitchen while looking out at the backyard, at the old swing set I'd built when the kids were little, rusted now but still standing. I thought about my son, Logan, at 5, laughing while I pushed him. My daughter, Natalie, at 3, demanding to go higher. Diana had been inside on the phone, barely watching. I heard footsteps on the stairs, faster than usual, concerned. She appeared in the kitchen doorway in her silk robe, the expensive one I'd bought her for Christmas that she'd claimed was too much, while wearing it every chance she got, hair messy, face confused. "Where are you going?" I set the glass in the sink. Out. "It's Sunday morning." "The password to the joint checking account has been changed." The look on her face, I genuinely wish I could frame it. "What?" she said, like the word had multiple syllables. "You heard me." And I walked out the front door, got in my car, and backed out of the driveway while she stood barefoot on the porch, already pulling out her phone, already trying to log in. Access denied. I drove to a coffee shop 3 towns over, the kind of anonymous, exposed brick place where nobody knows your name, and ordered a black coffee and a bagel while my phone began accumulating missed calls like a slot machine hitting jackpot. 1, 2, 3. Then texts. "What the hell is going on? You're being dramatic. I don't have time for this. Fix the account." I silenced my phone and opened my email. The message I'd drafted the night before was still sitting there, subject line reading, "Account Access Update." Recipients including our financial advisor, our accountant, and our estate attorney. I hit send. Within 20 minutes, Diana would try all 3 of them. They'd all tell her the same thing. Mr. Webb has requested temporary restrictions on joint assets pending legal review. For questions, please consult independent counsel. Independent counsel. Those two words were going to land like a piano dropped from a rooftop. By noon, her spa membership bounced. By 2 p.m., the wine club payment failed. By evening, the automatic payment on her car lease got declined. She sent 17 texts and left 8 voicemails that day. I deleted them all without listening to a single one. This wasn't cruelty. It was Philip's advice, repeated like a mantra. Anything you say can be used against you. Let her lawyer handle communication. Keep your hands clean. By Monday, her perfectly curated life was fraying at the edges like a cheap sweater. And it was only going to get more interesting from there. Monday morning, I walked into my office, checked my emails, attended the operations meeting, and reviewed quarterly reports like a man whose life hadn't just detonated over the weekend. My assistant, Karen, asked if I was feeling all right. I told her I'd never felt better, and I meant every word. Around 10 a.m., my phone started buzzing like it had something to prove. Diana's name, over and over. I watched it vibrate across my desk and then pocketed it without answering. Let it go to voicemail. Let her explain to an empty inbox that her spa membership had bounced and her grocery card had been declined at Whole Foods in front of people she knew. At lunch, I drove downtown to see Philip Crane. His office was on the 12th floor, windows overlooking the river. The whole setup was deliberately intimidating. Clean lines, expensive furniture, the kind of professional environment that says very clearly, I win and I charge accordingly. I'd first reached out to Philip 3 months earlier, given him the broad strokes, gotten the roadmap. Now I had what I'd been waiting for. She confessed, I told him, settling into the leather chair across from his desk. Saturday night, out loud, said it was a one-night thing and she'd do it again. Philip nodded, jotting notes. Witnesses. Just me, but I have recordings. His eyebrow went up. Home security system, audio and video. She doesn't know it backs up to cloud storage. I have the entire conversation. He set down his pen. That's solid. What else? I slid a thumb drive across his desk. What was on it were bank records showing irregular spending I'd flagged over 8 months, hotel receipts from 17 separate visits, and a comprehensive text message thread between Diana and Travis Keller spanning the entire duration of their arrangement. Because when you're a corporate controller and details are kind of your thing, you don't do anything halfway. Philip plugged in the drive, scrolled through everything in silence for several minutes. His expression didn't change, which, from a former prosecutor, is basically a standing ovation. This is thorough, very thorough. Adultery is still grounds in this state? I asked, though I already knew the answer. It affects everything. Alimony, asset division, the whole picture. With evidence like this, we file for fault-based divorce, request temporary restraining orders on asset movement, and pursue full dissolution. I'll have the petition drafted today. Good. I want to move quickly. You understand it's going to get ugly. She'll fight back. I looked at him calmly. Let her fight. We shook hands. I left feeling lighter than I had in years. Not happy, exactly, but the specific relief that comes from finally acting instead of just enduring. When I got back to my car, I had 14 missed calls from Diana. I deleted them all without listening to a single one. She'd wanted my attention for years, at dinner parties, during arguments, during the endless, subtle competitions of a marriage where one person gradually checks out. Now she had my full, undivided, legally documented attention. It just wasn't the kind she'd been angling for. That evening when I got home, she was waiting in the living room with her arms crossed, and that expression she always deployed when she'd decided she was the reasonable one and I was being difficult. Like she was the long-suffering adult and I was a misbehaving child who needed redirecting. 26 years of that look. She needed to talk, she said. About what? I said, and walked to the kitchen. She followed me into the kitchen, heels clicking on the tile in that particular rhythm that meant she was gearing up for a performance. Diana had a gift for reframing situations.
She could take virtually any circumstance and rotate it until she appeared as the victim. It was genuinely impressive in a I'm watching a nature documentary about an apex predator kind of way. "You locked me out of our accounts," she said, voice climbing. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? My card got declined at Whole Foods in front of people I know." I opened the fridge and grabbed a bottle of water. "You should have kept a separate emergency fund. Financial Planning 101. This is our money, Marcus. You can't just lock me out." "Actually, I can." And I did. "Why? Because I was honest with you?" I turned to face her then, full eye contact. "You call that honesty? Sitting me down at our anniversary dinner, smirking while you confess you cheated, and then announcing you'd do it again? That's not honesty, Diana. That's cruelty with garnish." "I thought you could handle it." Her voice shifted slightly, a recalibration like she was switching tactics. "You're always so calm, so controlled. I thought you wouldn't even care." "You thought wrong." "Paul, Marcus." She stepped closer, voice dropping to something almost pleading. "Come on, it was one mistake, one night. It didn't mean anything." "Then why did you say you'd do it again?" She faltered. "I was angry. I felt trapped. You're always working, always focused on everything, but—" "So you cheated. I made a mistake." I set the water bottle down on the counter and looked at her directly. "You made a choice, and now I'm making mine." The fear that moved across her face then, that was real. Not performed, not calculated. Real. "What does that mean?" "It means you should probably find yourself a lawyer." "A lawyer?" She said it like the concept was genuinely foreign. "Marcus, you can't be serious. You're not going to throw away 26 years over one night." I moved toward the stairs. "I'm not throwing anything away. You already did that." "Wait!" She grabbed my arm, and for a second the mask came off completely. "Do you know what the worst part is?" I said, stopping on the first step. "It's not even the cheating. It's that you thought I was too weak to do anything about it. You thought you could tell me to my face, watch me sit there and take it, and then we'd go back to normal, like I'm some kind of furniture you can rearrange whenever you feel like it." "I never said that." "You didn't have to." I went upstairs, locked the bedroom door, and ignored her knocking until she gave up. In the quiet of that room, I pulled out my phone and played back the recording from Saturday night. Her voice, crystal clear. "I had a one-night thing, and honestly, I'd do it again." I saved the file one more time. Then I lay down and closed my eyes. Tomorrow, Philip would file the paperwork. By end of week, Diana would be served. And then she'd start to understand that the quiet, steady husband she'd decided was safe to underestimate had been building a case against her for the better part of a year. She wanted a man who would react emotionally. What she got was a man who'd been doing homework. I need to pause here, because the story I just told you, the affair, the confession, the frozen accounts, the lawyer, that was already a complete story. A satisfying one, even. A clear beginning, middle, and an end that involved Philip Crane in a 12th floor office building and a thumb drive full of evidence that would make any divorce attorney weep with joy. But then, Wednesday happened. And Wednesday changed everything. The envelope showed up in the mailbox. Plain manila, lab logo in the corner. I'd been checking the mail twice a day for 2 weeks like someone expecting early college acceptance letters, except instead of my future, I was waiting on confirmation about my past. I opened it in my car, parked 3 blocks from the house. Inside, 2 lab reports, official letterhead, case numbers, timestamps. Clinical. Indisputable. My son, Logan, 29 years old, police officer. My proudest accomplishment outside of anything I'd ever done professionally. The first report, 99.9% probability of paternity. My blood, my DNA, my son. The second test, Natalie, 22 years old, college graduate, first real job, planning her future. The little girl I'd walked to kindergarten, taught to ride a bike, terrified bad boyfriends away with the quiet menace only a father can deploy. 0% probability of paternity. Excluded as biological father. I sat in that car for 10 minutes staring at those words. Here's what I want you to understand, and I mean really understand, not just absorb intellectually. That number doesn't erase 22 years. It doesn't undo first days of school or father-daughter dances or the specific way she used to fall asleep on the couch watching movies and pretend she hadn't. 0% paternity doesn't delete any of that. But it does rewrite the entire context of your marriage in one cold clinical paragraph. The timeline had always bothered me. 23 years ago, Diana went to a work conference in Atlanta, came back different, distant in a way I'd told myself was work stress. Natalie arrived 9 months later, and Diana's family said she looked just like Diana's father, and I'd accepted that explanation for 2 decades. I'd been right to wonder, I'd just been too willing to find an innocent explanation. I called Philip from the parking lot, told him what I had. "This changes things," he said. "How do you want to handle it?" I looked at the report one more time. Then I made a decision. Natalie wasn't going to find out from a court filing. She wasn't going to find out at all if I could help it. She was 22 years old, with a whole life in front of her and not a single ounce of guilt in any of this mess. She didn't need her world dismantled because her mother made choices she never had any part in. I don't tell Natalie, not yet, but I want it in the divorce filing. I want Diana to know that I know. That evening, Diana came home to find me cooking dinner. She approached me cautiously, the kind of careful movements you use around an animal you're not sure about anymore. "Tell me about Atlanta," I said without looking up at the stove. 23 years ago. The silence that followed was louder than anything she'd said at that dinner table Saturday night. "Who's Natalie's father, Diana?" I heard her start to cry behind me. I didn't stop cooking. Thursday morning, my son walked into my office in full uniform. Badge, duty belt, the whole setup. Logan had the face cops get when they're about to have a conversation nobody wants to have. Jaw set, eyes direct, professionally neutral in that particular way that means the professionalism is doing a lot of heavy lifting. My assistant buzzed me. "Your son is here. Send him in." He closed the door, crossed his arms, and didn't sit down. Just stood there with the kind of posture that says, "I'm trying to figure out how angry to be before I have all the information." "Dad, what's going on? Mom called me last night crying. Something about DNA tests and Atlanta. She wasn't making much sense." I turned my computer monitor toward him and let him read the report himself. He read it twice. Then he sat down heavily in the chair across from my desk like his legs had made a unilateral decision to stop holding him up. "Jesus," he said. "Yeah. Does Natalie know?" "Not yet. I don't want her to know until I figure out how to tell her, if I tell her." He ran a hand over his face, a gesture I recognized because I'd watched him do it since he was a teenager processing bad news. This is insane. I actually saw Mom with some guy about a year ago at a restaurant. I told myself it was probably just a colleague. He looked up at me with something I'd never quite seen from him before, raw, protective anger, the kind that belongs to someone who has decided a line has been crossed. "I'm sorry, Dad. I should have said something." "This isn't on you, son. This is entirely on her. Still, you didn't deserve any of this." He straightened up in the chair, another gesture I recognized, the one that means he's made a decision. "I'm with you. Whatever you need. Mom made her choices. You're my father. End of conversation." We sat in the quiet for a moment. "What about Natalie?" he asked. "When are you going to tell her?" "I don't know. Maybe never. She doesn't need to carry this. She's going to find out eventually. Mom will probably tell her herself to try to get sympathy. Let her try. Natalie's smart. She'll see through it." "You going to keep a relationship with her after all this?" I met his eyes. "She's my daughter. Biology doesn't change that. I raised her. I love her. Your mother's lies don't erase 22 years of showing up." Logan's expression shifted. The protective anger softened into something quieter, something that looked a lot like relief. "Good," he said, "because Nat worships you, always has." He stood up, adjusted his duty belt. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He walked around the desk and pulled me into one of those proper hugs that men only give each other when they've run out of adequate words. The kind that says, "I see you and I've got you, and none of this is going to take me out of your corner."
"Mom thought you were weak because you're quiet," he said when he stepped back. "I've watched you my whole life. You're the strongest man I know." After he left, I sat alone in my office for a long time, looking at nothing in particular. My son had chosen me, not because I'd asked him to, not because I'd poisoned the well or run a PR campaign, but because in 29 years of watching me, he'd seen exactly who I was. And when it counted, that was enough. The process server would be at the house in 2 hours. By tonight, Diana would be holding divorce papers, and I was done waiting. She flew home from Chicago without warning, showed up in the text thread with just, "Dad, can we meet? Just us." We sat in a coffee shop downtown, exposed brick, overpriced lattes, the kind of place that makes you feel like an adult, having an adult conversation, which was appropriate because that's exactly what we were about to do. She looked exhausted, eyes red, the particular drained look of someone who cried on a plane and is now running on caffeine and determination. "Mom called me," she said. "Told me you're divorcing her over one mistake. Said you're being vindictive and cruel." She paused. "Then I called Logan. He told me the truth about the affair, about the lying, about Atlanta, about the DNA test." My stomach dropped. "Logan shouldn't have told you that." "Yes, he should have." Her voice was steady but fraying at the edges. "I'm 22 years old, Dad. I'm not a kid. I deserve to know the truth about my own life." "Can you handle it?" She wiped her eyes. "I don't know. Right now it feels like the whole floor is gone. But here's what I do know." She looked at me directly, and I've never been more proud of anyone in my entire life than I was in that moment. "You are my father. I don't care what any lab report says. You're the one who sat through every volleyball game, every terrible school play, every parent-teacher conference where Mrs. Henderson had complicated things to say about my strong personality. You helped me move into my dorm room and cried when you said goodbye, and you thought I didn't see, but I did." I reached across the table and took her hand. "You're my daughter," I said. "Nothing changes that. Not now, not ever." "Does the biological father even know about me?" "I don't know who he is. Your mother never said." The flash of anger in her eyes was quick and precise. "Of course she hasn't, because she's been a coward her entire adult life. She had 22 years to tell us both the truth, and she just kept lying every single day." She pulled her hand back, not pulling away from me, pulling herself together. "I'm glad I know, Dad, because now I understand why you're doing this. It's not vindictive, it's not cruel, it's self-respect, and you deserve that." We talked for another hour after that. Her new job, the guy she'd been seeing, an apartment she was trying to furnish on a budget. Normal, ordinary father-daughter conversation happening in the middle of extraordinary circumstances, which is maybe the most human thing about the whole situation. When we hugged in the parking lot, she held on for a long time. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, sweetheart." "I'm not going to see Mom for a while," she said. "I can't. Not until I figure out how to process this. Is that terrible?" "It's honest. That's all you can be." She wiped her eyes. "I love you, Dad." She stepped back and looked at me with something I can only describe as admiration. "Logan was right," she said. "You're stronger than anyone gives you credit for, including Mom." After she left, I sat in my car and let myself feel all of it. The grief for the family I'd thought we were, the gratitude for the family we actually turned out to be, and the very specific kind of heartbreak that comes from watching your kid choose to grow up faster than they should have to. Both of my children, in their own ways, in their own timing, had looked at the full picture of what their mother had done and chosen to stand next to me anyway. That mattered more than any court ruling. Though the court ruling, as it turned out, was also going to be deeply satisfying.
Diana had hired a lawyer named Rick Brennan. Rick advertised on bus benches and late-night cable. He was 3 years out of law school, primarily handled DUIs and small claims cases, and was about to walk into a courtroom against Philip Crane, a former prosecutor who'd spent his career turning evidence into verdicts with the efficiency of an industrial paper shredder. I'm not going to pretend I didn't feel a small, petty, deeply human satisfaction about that. The courtroom was smaller than TV courtrooms, less cinematic. Fluorescent lighting, wood paneling, an American flag in the corner. Judge Patricia Harmon presiding, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and a professional reputation for exactly zero tolerance for nonsense. Diana sat at the opposing table in a conservative navy dress and minimal jewelry, the wronged wife costume, carefully assembled. She glanced at me when I walked in. I didn't acknowledge it. Philip laid out our case with the kind of calm, methodical precision that I recognized from my own work, the spreadsheet approach to devastation. Security footage of Diana's Saturday night confession, time-stamped and irrefutable. Bank records showing 8 months of irregular spending. Hotel receipts from 17 separate visits. A comprehensive text message record between Diana and Travis spanning the full duration. Then he presented the DNA results. Your Honor, we have laboratory confirmation that the defendant's daughter is not biologically related to my client. Mrs. Webb concealed this information for 22 years, maintaining a pattern of sustained deception that extended far beyond the recent adultery. Brennan tried to object, something about prejudicial information and relevance, but Philip cut through it smoothly. This wasn't a momentary lapse or a single mistake. This was calculated, ongoing dishonesty spanning decades. The evidence wasn't there to embarrass anyone. It was there because character matters in these proceedings, and the evidence was speaking clearly about character. Judge Harmon looked at Diana directly. Mrs. Webb, did you know the child was not your husband's biological daughter? Diana's lawyer whispered something. She nodded. Yes, Your Honor. And you never disclosed this to your husband? No, Your Honor. The judge's expression didn't change. Her tone stayed flat, professional, utterly unimpressed. 22 years of deception. She set down the document and told Philip to continue. Then it was Diana's turn on the stand. Brennan tried his best, had her explain the emotional distance in the marriage, the loneliness, the one regrettable mistake. She cried exactly when she was supposed to. It was a genuinely competent performance. And then Philip cross-examined her. Mrs. Webb, you testified you made one mistake. How many times did you meet with Mr. Keller? I don't remember exactly. We have documentation of 17 separate hotel visits over 8 months. Does that refresh your memory? The objection from Brennan was overruled. And when you discovered you were pregnant with your daughter, did you attempt to determine paternity? She sat very still. I assumed it was my husband's. You assumed. So for 22 years, you allowed your husband to raise and financially support a child you knew might not be his, without giving him the option to make an informed choice about that. She stared at her hands and said nothing. No further questions, Your Honor. Judge Harmon took less than 20 minutes. When she returned, her expression told the whole story before she said a word. Marriage dissolved on grounds of adultery. No spousal support awarded. Assets divided 60-40 in favor of the plaintiff. Personal debts incurred in Diana's name remain Diana's responsibility. All pension and retirement benefits accrued during the marriage go to the plaintiff. Outside on the courthouse steps, Philip shook my hand. One of the cleanest wins I've had in years, he said. What will you do now? I looked up at the clear October sky. Live my life, I said. Finally. 10 months after Diana announced at our anniversary dinner that she cheated and would do it again, I'm standing in the backyard of my new house watching Logan wrestle with grill assembly instructions while Natalie makes potato salad inside and his wife Sarah sets up patio furniture. The house is smaller than the old one, fewer square feet. No guest wing, no formal dining room, no landscaping that costs more per month than some people's rent. But it's mine. Paid for in cash, no mortgage, no history attached, except the history I'm building right now, which currently smells like charcoal and sounds like my son arguing with a hex wrench. Diana moved into an apartment across town. She's working as a receptionist at a dental office. The social circle she'd cultivated over 26 years largely evaporated. Her book club voted her out after Linda Reynolds, whose husband is an attorney, asked point blank whether the rumors were true. Diana tried to reframe as the victim. Linda had seen that playbook before. 8-1. Out. Her tennis partner got too busy. Her hairdresser became mysteriously fully booked. Travis Keller, the man worth detonating a marriage for, blocked her number once the affair fantasy met the reality of 2 lawyers and a courtroom. Turns out affair partners lose enthusiasm fast when you stop being someone else's exciting secret and become a regular person with debt and consequences. $80,000 in personal debt followed her right out of that marriage. I heard through Logan she's managing, technically. I don't think about her much, less than you'd expect. At the backyard table, Sarah asked if I'd thought about dating. Logan gave her the spousal look that means we discussed whether to bring this up. Sarah is a nurse, practical, direct, and had clearly decided the question was fair. Maybe eventually, I said. Right now, I'm enjoying the quiet. Natalie grinned over her potato salad. The quiet is overrated. You're a catch, Dad. Own house, good credit score, can assemble furniture. You're basically a unicorn in the dating market. I laughed, an actual real laugh. The truth is, I'm not in a hurry. For 26 years, I'd structured my entire existence around another person's needs, moods, and comfort. Now I have time to figure out who I am when I'm not doing that. Turns out, I like the gym. I like cooking. I like having people over without calculating whether Diana would approve. Simple things. Mine. Logan raised his beer. To honesty, and to Dad for showing us what integrity looks like, even when it's hard. We clinked glasses. Later, after everyone left and the stars came out above the trees, I sat on my porch with a beer and pulled up the photos from that afternoon. Logan laughing, Natalie with potato salad on her nose, ordinary moments, happy ones. My phone buzzed. Philip, ran into Diana's lawyer today. He asked about you. Told him you're doing great. Said Diana's struggling. Thought you should know. I read it twice. Deleted it. Her struggles were no longer my jurisdiction. Diana spent a Saturday night trying to break me with a confession she thought would either hurt enough to matter or prove I was too numb to care. What she actually did was hand me the confirmation I'd been waiting 8 months for and start a clock on her own unraveling. She thought my calm meant weakness. She was wrong about that, same as she'd been wrong about a lot of things. I finished my beer, went inside, and locked the door behind me. Tomorrow was just tomorrow, mine. And that, the simple, uncomplicated ownership of your own life, is worth more than any verdict, any account balance, any moment of watching consequences catch up to someone who thought they were untouchable. I'd never felt lighter.